This is the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. This is Samsung's thinnest, lightest, most futuristic foldable ever. It weighs only 215 grams, which is lighter than the S25 Ultra. It's only 4.2 millimeters thick when open, which is about the thickness of the USB-C port. And it's only 8.9 millimeters when closed, which is about the same as a regular phone. But all of this comes with a sacrifice that you might care about, an area that's still a long-standing gap, and a hefty price tag that just got heftier. So the question is it worth the hefty price tag? Okay, so there's no getting around the fact that everybody just needs to hold this phone in their hands because that's the only way they're gonna get it. See, it's not only lighter than most modern flagships, but it also just feels like a regular phone in your pocket, and it just happens to have a gorgeous 8-inch screen on the inside. And the outside screen is wider this year at 6.5 inches and a 21:9 aspect ratio. So it makes the outside screen just as usable as a regular phone, and it makes typing comfortable as well. Instead of feeling like a TV remote, which previous generations felt like. It's still narrow enough to reach across the screen, but wide enough to type on comfortably. Both the inner and outer displays are just gorgeous. They have a 120 Hz refresh rate and a peak brightness of 2600 nits. It's very clear that Samsung's objective this year is to really blur the lines between a phone and a tablet with no compromise. I think this year they absolutely delivered, minus a couple of key areas, which I'm going to get into. Adding to that no compromises theme, Samsung has also added a 200 megapixel main camera, which I promise we're going to talk more about. But the funny thing is it also just makes the phone wobble on a table like I've never seen before. And even if you put on a case, it's still gonna wobble. So let's talk about the main attraction, which is the inside screen. Why would you want this? And how are some ways you could use it? Well, the idea is simple. Instead of buying two separate devices, using two separate devices, syncing two separate devices, and most importantly, carrying around two separate devices, you could do it all on one device. So then now the question is, what can you do? Many apps are actually optimized that you can use Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint just like you might on a computer. You can read email much more efficiently with a preview pane, and the same with WhatsApp as well. Of course, nothing beats reading a PDF or a book like you would on a tablet screen. And of course, you can multitask like no other phone can. You have this dock at the bottom of your screen, just like a computer. And from here, you can open two apps and a third app and another one as a pop-up window. And this is great if you want to passively play media while ordering Uber Eats, or if you want to cross-shop Lyft and Uber. The limit is your imagination. And you can save these two app layouts as well as app pairs. So one tap brings back your entire workflow. But remember, this is a phone that folds. It's not a static tablet. It's not a static phone, which means that you can actually do things with this that you can do with those other devices. And Samsung has found clever ways to utilize the phone. If you half fold the device on YouTube, you get media controls at the bottom of the screen. And it's the perfect kickstand as well. If you're web browsing, you can turn the bottom half into a trackpad, or you can use the keyboard like a mini laptop and get some quick typing done. And if that's not enough for you, you can literally turn this phone into a literal computer by just plugging it in to a monitor and using Samsung DeX. It's even handy for making videos. I can use the camera and read the screen all at the same time. Heck, if your car doesn't come with Android Auto, well, the screen on this is big enough for you to be able to pull that off. By the way, I'm going to be making a dedicated tips and tricks video, so if you're interested, make sure you subscribe and like the video. Now I'm saving the obvious for last, but watching movies on this 8-inch display is just incredible. Yes, it letterboxes, but just rotate your screen 90 degrees and you'll be able to see more of the video. And yes, it's more viewable screen than regular phones. And thanks to the new Snapdragon 8 Elite chip, it's a gaming beast too. Graphically intense games run at max settings with no problem. And even old classics are just so much more fun to play on this device because of that larger screen. But one area where I dock points is the speakers. They're not as loud as most flagship phones. There's absolutely no bass, and speakerphone calls just don't feel as enjoyable as they do on typical bar-shaped flagship phones. Now, all of this sounds great, but you know what would be nice? Having the S Pen to be able to sign documents. And this is the sacrifice that Samsung made to make the phone thinner and lighter. Now, I have to acknowledge, on a screen that's as big as a tablet and not having a stylus to use with that screen is a missed opportunity. But for previous generations, you had to go out of your way to buy an S Pen separately, which most people didn't do. And then you had to go out of your way to buy a case to carry that S Pen, or if you were brave enough, you just carried the S Pen separately in your pocket every single day. And the sales data showed that most people didn't really buy an S Pen with the Fold. So now, as a result, the phone is thinner and lighter. Is that trade-off worth it? It depends on who you are. For someone like me who doesn't really use the S Pen much, it's okay. I would rather take the thinner and lighter phone because I want my foldable to feel like a regular phone in my pocket. I'm okay with that trade-off. But like I said, it's a wasted opportunity. And what Samsung should have done is create two versions of this phone. A version that's a little bit heavier and a little bit thicker to be able to use the S Pen, and this version here. So the fact that Samsung didn't make an S Pen compatible model feels like a wasted opportunity. And even though you have all this multitasking, the experience isn't always as smooth. Sometimes apps just become unresponsive. So for example, I sometimes can't open the keyboard on Microsoft Teams or on Outlook without having to crash and relaunch the app from scratch. Some apps like Google Photos are laggy in full screen mode without any rhyme or reason. My hope is that these will be resolved via future software updates and app optimizations, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, some apps which you'd assume would be optimized are not optimized either. Like Gmail is just fully stretched out, which confuses me because Google also makes a foldable, which means it's underutilizing its own app on its own foldable as well. Seems like a wasted opportunity. All that multitasking, media watching, and gaming on a big, bright 8-inch screen comes at a cost. After about 6 hours of screen on time, I usually have about 15% remaining, which is much better than average, but it's not the best. Okay, so the battery is going to likely get you to the end of the day, but it's probably not going to get you into the next day. And if you push that inner display way too hard, you're not even going to get through the night. And by the way, the charging speed is still 25 watts, so it will take about an hour and 25 minutes to go from 0 to full, which is not bad, but not the best. Seems like a wasted opportunity. Okay, so for years, the biggest compromise for foldable phones, beside the thickness, has always been the cameras. These phones are expensive, and the camera system has always felt a generation or two behind. But Samsung aims to fix that this year, and they almost got there. Okay, so the phone has a 200 megapixel main sensor, a 12 megapixel ultrawide sensor, and a 10 megapixel 3x sensor. The 200 megapixel sensor is the exact same one as the S25 Ultra, with some slight differences in the lenses and some other components, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same sensor. As expected, the main camera is really good. Images are sharp. The colors are vibrant, but not cartoonishly so. The dynamic range is impressive. And for the first time, it feels like a truly flagship-grade camera on a Z Fold. And then the 2x digital zoom, which comes from this 200 megapixel camera, has very minimal quality loss. And then the low light performance is good. It's nothing to brag about. The image can get quite a bit softer and a bit noisier, but it's still pretty good. And then there's the video quality. This is impressive. Everything from the details to the colors to the dynamic range is just brilliant. And in low light, I was also impressed. The video is clean and clear, and it is a bit noisy, but still, it was so dark, I could barely see anything myself. The wide-angle lens is also solid. Images are decently sharp, it has a pretty wide field of view, and the colors are great too. Although weirdly, the color science is a bit different in the wide-angle lens versus the main camera. It does decently well in low light too. The video quality could be better. It's not as sharp as I would like, but overall, it's still pretty good. Remember that long-standing gap I was referring to in the beginning of the video? This is where the camera system feels a generation or two behind. The quality is good in good lighting, but it starts to fall apart very quickly as the light gets dimmer. And you can see that as the light gets dimmer, it feels like it's a completely different camera. The phone zooms up to 30x in photos, where it does a pretty decent job, not like the S25 Ultra, but pretty good, gets the job done, enough zoom range for most people. The 12x in video though is so bad. Don't even bother zooming in at 12x, but the other zoom ranges are just fine. This is how the different zoom ranges look in good lighting, And this is how the different zoom ranges look in low light. And because this phone folds, you can use this phone as a quick tripod by just half folding it. Samsung takes advantage of the folding screen by showing you a quick preview of the shots that you're taking, or it shows your subject what they look like before the photo is taken. But the best part is you can use the main 200 megapixel camera to take your selfies. You just have to unfold the phone and use the cover screen as your viewfinder. The quality blows away any normal front-facing camera. If you're not used to it, it will feel over-sharpened or perhaps even uncomfortable because it catches every little detail, but the quality is unmatched. And once you get used to it, any other front-facing camera will just feel subpar. I mean, look at this portrait video. That just looks crisp and not something out of a phone camera. But it does feel really awkward and scary holding your phone like that because you're just exposing the most delicate part of your phone to the elements. So while it's a cool feature, I'd be very careful using your phone this way. Okay, so what's the verdict? Samsung obviously took a massive gamble. They sacrificed the S Pen, which is a power user feature for a phone that's typically catered towards power users. It sacrificed it for a thin and light design to appeal to the masses. And to be honest, there are moments where an S Pen would be great, but the reality is most people would rather take the thinner and lighter design. And based on the excellent sales numbers and the number of iPhone converts I've seen with this phone, looks like Samsung made the right decision. Well, now, if the S Pen is important to you, this phone is not for you. You should be looking at an S25 Ultra or even a discounted Galaxy Z Fold 6. And if you want the absolute best and most versatile smartphone camera experience, you should be looking at the iPhone 16 Pro Max or the S25 Ultra. But if your goal is to have the most futuristic, most portable, and most powerful smartphone tablet hybrid experience, this is the phone to go for. It's the first mainstream available foldable, and I said the word mainstream, that doesn't feel like a compromise in your pocket. Instead, it feels like the future. Now, this phone is really expensive. It starts at $2,000 US. But if you're someone who's gonna buy a flagship smartphone and a flagship tablet, do yourself a favor, buy this instead. This phone is my favorite phone of all time. Well done, Samsung. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next time.